Hello students. After learning all the treatments that will be given in a typical treatment plan, next we will be concentrating on learning the last treatment that will be given in a water treatment plan, that is nothing but the disinfection. We will be discussing all the things related with the disinfection in this particular session. See, the word itself is having the word infection. Along with that, we are attaching one more term, dis. What it means? Infection. When it is caused, if some of the pathogenic unwanted bacteria are present in the water, if you are going to have, then we will be getting some of the diseases like typhoid and other such dysentery, amoebic dysentery. All such diseases will be coming along with the consumption of the infected water. So in order to kill such pathogenic organisms and bacteria that is present in the water, we will be going for removing them in the water. The process of removing the harmful pathogenic bacteria in the water is called disinfection, and the chemicals which are used for that purpose, the chemicals whichever we will be using for this purpose, we call it as disinfectants. So there are many disinfectants that are available, and each of them have good capacity to kill the pathogenic bacteria. But more common and most used in India is the bleaching powder, which actually contains the chlorine. But in a common use, we generally call it as a bleaching powder. Generally, as we know, in a household scale, we will be using them frequently. As we can see in hospitals also, sometimes the water that is supplied to our houses, supply water, which will also smell, certain amount of the bleaching powder smell will be coming sometimes during the rainy season. Some excess smell is also coming. The smell what we are getting is actually the smell of the chlorine. So chlorine is a agent that actually causes the disinfection in the bleaching powder. So we will be learning about how the chlorine is working on a disinfection in detail. Before moving on to that, first of all, let us understand why we are going for disinfection. See, whenever we are giving the processes such as screening, sedimentation, filtration, coagulation, all such process, we are able to remove the pollutants. But in no process, we are giving an importance for the removal of the bacteria, and also for the removal of color, odor, taste, and also lastly some of the dissolved organic and inorganic things will also be present in the water. In order to take care of all these things, we will be going for a process of disinfection. Disinfection is intended just to kill the bacteria, but along with killing the bacteria, it also helps us to remove certain amount of the color, odor, taste, and also helps in removing some of the dissolved organic material that is present in the water. This will be the advantage of going for the disinfection. So disinfection will be done even at the treatment plant scale, even at the house scale we will be going for the disinfection. It is general practice from the olden days that whenever we will be getting the fever at a house, we will be going for drinking the boiled water. What happens when we boil the water? It helps to kill some of the bacteria present in the water. So that is a basic thing, or a basic method we are going to practice to be safe from pathogenic bacteria. So in a large scale, we can't go for boiling or any such simple treatment. That is why we will be going for some different treatments that is particularly present for the disinfection. We will be understanding all such methods here. Before going on understanding all such methods, first of all, let us understand what are the requirements when we call some disinfectant as a good disinfectant. So the requirements of a good disinfectant. This we need to understand in order to select properly a particular type of the disinfectant. So under the requirements of a good disinfectant are the criteria for selection of a good disinfectant. We have some of the characters as below. First one we are considering is it should be capable of destroying all the pathogenic organisms present in the water within the contact time given. So for example, I will be giving only half an hour as a contact time for the disinfectant what I have added. It should be capable of killing all the pathogenic organisms within the time what I have given. That should be its character. It should not take much of the time for its reaction. Next point we are considering is we are adding the disinfectant at the last. So after giving all the treatments, it should not again change its physical and chemical characters. It should not add any residual pollutants into the water, so that the physical and chemical property of the water and character of the water is changed. It should not interact with any of the properties of the water. So last third point we are considering is, it should not leave any product of the reactions. As we know, whenever we are adding some chemicals, after the reaction some byproducts will be left. Such things should not happen here. What are the disinfectant we are adding, it should be completely consumed in order to kill the bacteria, but it should not leave any residual products which are unwanted for us in the water. And next point we are considering is, it should be easily available at a reasonable cost. Cost is a prime thing whenever we are choosing some of the process, because we want the process to be economical, but we want the best result. That is why it should be easily available also, and also it should be of a reasonable cost. When we are saying an example for this, we have the two process. UV process also helps in killing the bacteria, and the addition of the bleaching powder also helps in killing the bacteria. When we talk about the bleaching powder, it is easily available, and in any of the common shops we can afford it, and any of the common people who are uneducated can also afford that disinfectant and easily add it into the water. And even though addition of little bit variations in that doesn't create much of the health problem, but whereas the UV process is completely technical process, it is not accessible to the common people. For that we need particular arrangements. Because of that it is costly and also not easily accessible. That is the comparison. So because of that we are considering it should be easily available at reasonable cost. And next thing we are considering is, some residual concentration of disinfectant should remain in the water after the treatment. So here also we can say the example of that UV treatment. Whenever you are treating it with the UV treatment, when water is passing through the UV radiation, then the bacteria is getting killed. So when it passes further, so it may again get contaminated. So for future contamination, some residual amount of the disinfectant should be present as a backup. If it is not present, there is no point in treating the water and killing the bacteria at some particular point. For example, whenever we are going to supply the water, so in the treatment plant we are disinfecting the water. When it reaches the house, it should be safe for the people. So what happens, whenever it is traveling from treatment plant until it reaches the houses, it may again get infected in between because of some seepage of the seepage from the that is drainages, or also many other drainage works that will be carrying around, some from manholes or septic tanks. Some unwanted or the infections may enter into the water. So until it reaches the house, some amount of the residual concentration, means small amount of the disinfectant should be present in the water, so that as the in the middle some residual contamination enters, it should be capable of killing that and making it safe. So that is the expectation. We call it as residual concentration should be there after the treatment. Lastly, we are saying it should be detectable by the simple methods and simple tests. Whenever we are going to test it, whether how much of amount of the disinfectant we have added in the water, some simple tests should be available which we can conduct at a laboratory simply. If any complex methods are available, it will be becomes tedious for us to test every time. Whenever we are adding the some dosage, fixed dosage, sometimes it may exceed or sometimes it may not be sufficient for killing the bacteria. In order to test it how much of disinfectant is present in the water, we had to go for some tests. It should be simple. Next we are going to understand the different methods that are available for the disinfection, that we label it as methods used for disinfection. So in order to understand this, let us start it from the very basic method that we adopt. First one we are considering is the boiling. So this is a very familiar method we are practicing from the ancient times. Boiling is a technique that we practice in even at the house scales. Around for 15 to 20 minutes, if you are boiling the water, that will be enough to kill the pathogenic bacteria that is present in the water. But what are its disadvantages? Advantages that it can be adopted at a house scale, but it has some disadvantages, making it a limited method. So it changes the taste of the water. It is common fact that whenever um, lukewarm water is given, it will be of a different taste when we compare it with the normal water. Because of that, this is important fact that the taste is changed. So this is not easily acceptable. Okay, even though this is acceptable, it has some other disadvantage that it cannot be adopted at a large scale, that we know. Like if you have a millions of liters of the water, we cannot go for boiling that in a treatment plant. That is the problem with this. And also boiling doesn't make any residual disinfection activity. See, whenever we are boiling the water, after we are storing it in a container itself has some kind of infection, then it again gets infected. That is the problem. Any kind of a residual disinfection action will not be present with the method of the boiling. And this method can be useful only in cases of some kind of emergencies at a house scale, but not for the regular treatment. These are some of the disadvantages associated with the method of the boiling. And next method we are learning is the ozone method. Next method we are considering is the ozone method. So term ozone, we know the molecule O3, we call it as a ozone. See, whenever we are splitting this into O2 and O, this is the single atom of the oxygen. This we call it as a nascent oxygen. So this single oxygen atom has the property of killing the bacteria. That is, the process of disinfection can be done by making use of this nascent oxygen. When we are producing this nascent oxygen in the water, the disinfection process can be achieved. But as we know, this splitting is not stable for a long time. Because of that, this also has some disadvantages, such as process obviously proves to be costly. Process proves to be costly, since we need to get a O3 molecule and then we have to go for splitting up of the atoms into O2 and O, and also the storage of that is quite difficult because it is very unstable. Because of that, storing the nascent oxygen is very difficult, and it also doesn't have any residual activity, or any residual nascent oxygen is not left in the water. Because of that, it cannot take care of the future contamination of the water. These are some of the disadvantages with the ozone method. Further, we study some other methods also. The next treatment we are considering is the excess lime treatment. So the use of excess lime is well known to us, since we have already discussed about the hardness removal. In hardness removal, we know the importance of the lime. When excess lime is added into the water, it actually increases the pH of the water, which means pH of the water rises above 7. When pH rises above 7, we call it as alkalinity, alkaline water. So when pH rises, always it tends to kill the bacteria. So increased pH tends to kill the bacteria. It creates an atmosphere which will not be prevalent, or it will not be suitable for the living of the bacteria. Because of that, they cannot survive in that environment and they get killed out with the increased pH. But what are the disadvantages with the lime treatment? This is easily adopted, but it is also a kind of a chemical. So the water that is treated, first of all, let us discuss the disadvantage. First one is, water that is treated with the excess of lime cannot be directly consumed. So after giving the lime treatment, it cannot be directly consumed, or because of that we cannot supply it directly for the drinking purpose. And also, when we are adding the excess of the lime, removing that excess lime in the water, excess has to be removed. Removing that is again a process, and it also costs for us. And also some of the things will be getting settled at the bottom. We have to again go for removing that sludge kind of a material, and because of that, this is also quite difficult to be adopted at a supply scale. And next method we are learning is iodine and bromine method. Iodine and bromine are two of the chemicals that we have already heard of it. iodine and bromine method. So these will be added, these chemicals will be added into the water. Either they may be available as pills or as pellets. Okay, so pills will be just like the tablets what we consume. Pellets generally will be of this shape. So these things will be available. So in both the forms we can just add it into the water directly. But these are also chemicals. When we are adding it into the water, it also gives us some of the disadvantages. It is changing the taste and odor of the water. That is one of the problem. Here also the residual activity is not present. Residual activity is not present, and this is not suitable at a large scale. Because of that, this can be adopted whenever there is an emergency, like in army troops or in a swimming pools. We can go for this method. As we know, in the swimming pool water it will be regularly used. Because of that, we have to definitely go for a disinfection of the swimming pool water. Generally, as we can smell, most of the times chlorine will be added into this water. So another thing is, we can go army troops, in cases of the emergency, they can go for addition of the iodine and bromine into the water. Next method we are considering is the UV treatment. That is, ultraviolet rays has to be passed through the water. How it is produced? So whenever we are passing the electric current through a vapor of mercury that is filled in a bulb. Okay, so by passing the electric current through a bulb which is having the vapor of a mercury, we can produce the UV rays. So whenever we are going for a UV rays treatment, water has to flow in thin layers so that all the contact surface comes in contact with the UV radiation. Otherwise the process will not be that effective. And also this is very powerful method when we compare all other techniques for the disinfection. But as we can see, production of UV radiations itself is very difficult. Because of that, the process proves to be costly, and there is no residual disinfectant that is left in the water. And also this method is not properly working whenever the turbidity is more than 15 ppm or mg per liter. Turbidity exceeds in the water, this is not at all effective. These are some of the disadvantages with the use of the UV treatment. But as we know, at a house scale, at a simple treatment plant which is very compact, that is used at a house scale, we are going for UV treatment also. Nowadays in all the aquaguards what we are using, it has a UV treatment method for disinfecting the water. Why? Because it doesn't changes the any physical and chemical character of the water, not even it imparts any taste into the water. Because of that, this has been used in the house scale. Because whenever we are using at a house scale, we don't want any residual activity, because we are directly consuming that water what we are getting it from the filters. That is why we can go for UV treatment at a house scale, but not at a large scale. Even though some of the foreign countries definitely go for use of this method in a large treatment plants also. So as we told, the previous method, iodine and bromine method, and this method is also quite costly when we compare with the other methods. Next method we are going to learn. Next method we are considering is addition of potassium permanganate into the water, the formula for which is KMnO4. So when we use the word potassium permanganate, we also know that one more word is attached with, that is well. So usually this is potassium permanganate is usually used for disinfecting the open wells that will be present in the villages, because it has a prominent character which can easily kill the cholera causing germs that will be present in the water. So previously when we talk about cholera, just like we are suffering from the disease corona, like that previously cholera was one such disease which was not having any of the medicines. Because of that, entire villages used to get killed up because of the cholera, not finding any of the methods for the disinfection. Then in order to control the cholera disease, we have to go for disinfection of the water, because it was a water spreading disease. So in order to do this, we can add the potassium permanganate into the water, and also some of the medicines has been found for this. And along with that, disinfecting the water is one of the basic technique in order to be safe from the cholera causing germs. Even nowadays also it is there, but medicines are already available. Because of that, this problem is not most prominent nowadays. But it was prominent in the olden days. People have suffered from this a lot. Because of that, in a village scale, potassium permanganate is best suited in order to go for killing the cholera causing germs. Because in the olden days, the mass pilgrimage and mass bathing, due to the like we do it in Ganga Mela, Kumbh Mela, that we do it in Ganga River. So like that, there was a mass bathing. Due to mass bathing, usually they feel it as a holy water, and people start dipping in that water. Because of that, the infections easily enters into the water. So such infections, when present in the water, they will be sufficient to cause some of the waterborne diseases. For example is a cholera. So because of such practices, cholera was more prominent in the olden days, but nowadays it is been controlled. So what are disadvantages with this method? So as we told, it is not suitable for killing all types of bacteria. It is not effective on all types of bacteria. And also potassium permanganate has some color. Because of that, the vessels, whenever water which is used, which is having the potassium permanganate, creates stains on the vessels, porcelain vessels what we are using, or white vessels what we are using, some spots of this color of the potassium permanganate, which is very difficult to remove. That is a problem. But as well, only because of these disadvantages we cannot avoid it. But but at a village scale we can go for use of this potassium permanganate. And next and the last method we are studying is the chlorination. Next method we are studying, the last method is the chlorination, the most prominent method of the disinfection that we are considering in India, that is chlorination, which means the addition of chlorine into the water. For addition of the chlorine into the water, we have several methods in order to add the chlorine into the water. Like the different forms of the chlorine are available. By adding different forms, we can go for disinfection. Either we can add it in a liquid form, solid form, or else in a gaseous form also. This is the advantage with the method of a disinfection. It has all the other advantages which we don't have with the use of other disinfectants. Let us now learn it in detail. We talk about the chlorination, addition of chlorine into the water for the purpose of disinfection. It's that process we call it as a chlorination. When we talk about its advantages, since it is very different from other process, it is very effective, and at the same time it is cheap also. And whenever we are considering this process, we can achieve the amount of the chlorination or amount of the disinfection we want very effectively. And also the material that is used for chlorination is very cheap. And whenever we are using it for the public supplies, it is absolutely safe for public consumption. Even though whenever some residual amount of the disinfectant is present, that is chlorine is present in the water, it will not be harmful for the consumption. It is very safe for the public consumption, and it is very reliable and easily adoptable also. So it is adoptable even at the large scale, even at the small scale. And more importantly, we want the residual action from the disinfectant that can be easily achieved with this method. That is, some amount of the residual chlorine can be left in the water to take care of the future contamination of the water. And when we talk about the contact time, around 15 to 30 minutes of contact time, if it is given after adding the chlorine into the water, that will be sufficient in order to kill the bacteria that is present, and also to remain in a residual concentration. So we should not add the quantity which is too small to kill the pathogenic bacteria. It should not be added in excess, that may impart some bad taste into a taste and odor into the water, because chlorine has some particular odor. So it doesn't impart much of the taste. Because of the chlorine which is present, that taste and odor may come, which is not aesthetic for the consumption of the water. So because physically some variations are there in the water that cannot be easily accepted by the people. That is why we should properly maintain its quantity. So whenever we discuss about the chlorination, there are varieties or types of the different types of the chlorination also. Before moving on to that one, let us understand one more term, the chlorine demand. So always the word demand means something or how much it is wanted. So in a water, whenever we are adding the chlorine, some amount of the chlorine is consumed by the dissolved organic and inorganic material present in the water. For degradation of this, some amount of the chlorine is used, because chlorine is very good oxidizing agent. So since it is having a property of oxidizing, so because of that, some degradation of the organic and inorganic matter, they get stabilized by consumption of the oxygen provided by the chlorine. Afterwards, which is some amount of the chlorine which is left out will be used for killing the bacteria. So the amount of the chlorine that is uh, that we have added, and amount of the chlorine that is left out after the treatment, complete treatment, that we call it as a chlorine demand, which means we are going to add around 1 kg and only 250 grams of that is left after the treatment, which means 750 grams is its demand, or the its demand means water requires 750 grams of the chlorine in order to do the process of the complete disinfection, that we can call it as a chlorine demand. Always whenever we are adding the chlorine into the water, before adding it we have to test the chlorine demand of that water. It will be not for all kinds of the water. Why? Because when we consider some river water, since it is a open source, pollution may be high. So because of that, and also how much treatments we have given previously is also a consideration. If you are going only for the disinfection, then the infectants will be high and also the organic and inorganic material will be high. In such a case, demand may vary. That is why, just like we do it a jar test, here also we go for chlorine demand test also. We keep out so many jars in order to consider or test the chlorine demand. We add to the same water is taken in all the jars, and different amount of the chlorine is added in each of the jars. Then we will be initially we will be checking amount of the chlorine that is present, and finally we will be again checking the residual chlorine that is left. So in which container it is giving us a quantity of 0.2 mg per liter, 0.2 mg per liter of the chlorine, that we are considering as a optimum, because 0.2 mg per liter of residual chlorine is recommended in the water by the BIS standards. So that much of chlorine should be left in the water. So before this, some may not give any of the chlorine that is left in the water, that is its chlorine demand. After some amount of 0.2 mg per liter is left, that we pick it as a suitable concentration of the chlorine, we need to add it into that water. Whenever we are considering 1 liter of water, we can say if we have added around 5 mg of a chlorine into the water, we can say that is 5 mg per liter, which is left out a concentration of 0.2 mg per liter in the water. For 1 liter, 5 mg is a chlorine demand. That will be a suitable addition of the chlorine we have to go for in a large scale also. That is a concept with the chlorine demand. Next, let us study with different types of the chlorination. Next, let us understand different types and also the forms of chlorination. So, when we discuss different types of the chlorination, so first one we are considering is the plain chlorination. So, under this, so whenever water we are withdrawing it from the reservoirs or the deep lakes, water will be comparatively purer, and also it has a turbidity less than 30 ppm. Then we are then we are avoiding all the other treatments such as sedimentation, coagulation, filtration. Then we are alone giving the treatment of chlorination. Then we call it as a plain chlorination, and around 0.5 mg per liter of the chlorine should be added when we are going for a plain chlorination. Since we are avoiding all the other treatments and giving only the chlorination, this method we call it as a plain chlorination technique. Type of the chlorination we are considering is the pre-chlorination. So what pre means? Preliminarily or firstly we are going for the chlorination, means before giving out any of the other treatments we are first of all going for the chlorination or addition of the chlorine. So where or which point the chlorine is added in the treatment plant, because the first process is a screening. It may be added before screening, it may be added before sedimentation, like that. At which point we have to go for the chlorination is decided based on these points. So if algae is present in the sedimentation and filters, that we have to check it when we are adding it before the sedimentation or filtration. And then amount of coagulant we are going to use it in the process is also one of the important factor that decides the point of chlorination. And next is the objectionable taste and odor that is created because of the addition of the chlorine. And next is the bacterial load on the filters. So bacterial loads that is decided based on the disinfection or the chlorination what we are going to do it, because when we are going for a chlorination it can change the amount of the treatment that is required with the sedimentation, filtration, as well as in the other process of coagulation, all such process, because all of these processes are connected with this factor. And lastly, the purification of the sludge that is settled in the sedimentation tank is also an important factor. Deciding all these factors, we can fix at which point chlorine has to be added into the water. Pre-chlorination is a process we add the chlorine before any other treatments. Next type of the chlorination we are considering is the post chlorination. So as we told, in pre-chlorination we will be adding the chlorine before any other treatments. Like this is exactly opposite of that. We are going to add the chlorine after giving all the treatments, just before it enters the distribution system. So treated water, when it is supplied to the public in through the distribution system, before supplying it we have to go for addition of the chlorine. This we call it as a post chlorination. This is very commonly used in our Indian water treatment plants. So after giving all the treatments only we go for the chlorination, which ensures some amount of the residual concentration of around 0.2 to 0.3 mg per liter of the chlorine is left out in the water. So when we are going for chlorination at last, this can be easily achieved, so that it takes care of the future recontamination of the water. Somewhere in between the pipes it will be moving, it gets contaminated, it will be treated again by this amount of the chlorine that is left in the water. So that is why post chlorination is also useful. Next method we are learning is double chlorination. So the word itself is suggesting that double time we are going for addition of the chlorine. When pre-chlorination and post-chlorination, both the methods are practiced in the water treatment plant, then we call it as a double chlorination. When water is highly polluted, in such a cases we go for a double chlorination method. Next technique of the chlorination we are considering is dechlorination. So as we told, sometimes some excess amount of the chlorine will be present in the water that is actually undesirable in the water. So in such a case we can treat it with the sulfur dioxide or with the excess of the oxygen in order to remove the chlorine from the water. The removal of chlorine from the water we call it as a dechlorination, because excess always creates a problem in the water, making it not suitable for the drinking because of its because of its odor and also the taste. Next method we are considering is rechlorination. After we are supplying the water to the public, sometimes in between it may get contaminated, or else sometimes, since the long water supply line is there, so the residual quantity what we are adding may not be sufficient to reach the entire distance. It may sometimes the 0.2 mg per liter what we are adding may be consumed in between only. So in order to make it safe for the further length, we will be sometimes providing a booster pumps or some service reservoirs here, and we will be again adding the chlorine into the water. So such a process we call it as a rechlorination. This is also helpful for taking out the contamination that is taking in between the supply lines. And the last method we need to learn is a breakpoint chlorination. So breakpoint chlorination, we will learn it along with some reference diagram, and let us understand it properly. This is also a technique, even we have some experiment for this in order to find the breakpoint chlorination. Let us understand this with the help of some diagram.
The figure shown here is referred for indicating the breakpoint chlorination. Let us first check the various components in this figure. This is a graphical representation in order to indicate the breakpoint chlorination. First of all, we can see on the x-axis we are indicating the applied chlorine in mg per liter, and on the y-axis we are indicating residual chlorine in mg per liter. So residual chlorine is actually the amount which will be left after complete usage of the chlorine for killing the bacteria and also for some other process in the water. So this is actually the left out chlorine. So we are drawing the graph against the applied chlorine, that is the amount of the chlorine we are applying to the water, and the left out chlorine. So now the dashed line which is indicated here is indicating the imaginary line which will appear when there is no chlorine consumption, that is for pure water. Means how much you are applying which will come out as a residual chlorine, then this line will appear. Generally this won't happen with the water. So in actual condition what happens, here we are indicating this is a point A we are showing, and this is the point B we are indicating, and then there is a point C. These are the crucial points wherein we are taking it for the indications. Now let us check. Whenever we are considering the breakpoint chlorination, it is generally a term which gives us an idea of the extent of the chlorine that is added to the water. In fact, it generally represents that much of dose of the chlorination beyond which any further addition of the chlorine will equally appear as a free residual chlorine. So whenever we are considering this test, so generally the water contains two kinds of the impurities after all the treatments. First of all, which is bacteria, and another one is organic impurities. Usually color, odor, taste will be there. That one we don't give much of the importance in our treatment. So when we add the chlorine to the water, the chlorine required first of all to destroy the bacteria that are present. That is our intention. So after that, so when it is applied, first of all it is used to kill some of the bacteria. So that is indicated by the curve AB, so which is gradually rising. Okay, so after we apply certain amount of the chlorine, first of all it is used up by the water for killing the bacteria, which means from A to B the consumption of the chlorine gradually increases. So utilization of the chlorine to kill the bacteria is indicated by the curve AB. Afterwards, so the line, then the curve decreases from B to C point, which is indicating the utilization of the chlorine to oxidize the organics. Since, as we said, chlorine is very good oxidizing agent. After usage of the chlorine for killing the bacteria, some amount of the chlorine is also used to oxidize the organics. So, and then it reaches the point C. From the point C, all the applied chlorine dose comes out as a residual chlorine. Any further addition of the chlorine appearing equally as a residual chlorine. This has been shown, and it is sharply taking at a 45 degree from the application. So this point C, we call it as a break point. Since from for this point, where the whatever the chlorine we are applying, it is coming out as a free chlorine. So there is no further utilization of the chlorine. So in all the public supply schemes, chlorine is added up to breakpoint chlorination, and beyond this, just we want 0.2 milligram per liter to appear as a excess chlorine to take care of the future contamination of the water. So this one we are calling it as a breakpoint chlorination. This is a concept behind it. We will be discussing is on various forms of the chlorine that can be applied to the water. Generally, the 5 different forms of the chlorine are considered. One is either applying it in liquid chlorine or as a chlorine gas, which we call it as a combined chlorine. Next is in the form of hypochlorites or bleaching powder. Third one, applying it as a chlorine tablets. Fourth one is applying it in the form of chloramines, that is a mixture of ammonia and chlorine. Fifth one is applying it in the form of a chlorine dioxide. First of all, let us discuss the first one, that is application of the chlorine as a liquid chlorine or chlorine gas. The molecular chlorine, that is Cl2, can be carried and applied to the water to be treated either in the liquid or in the gaseous form. Here we can see this is available in the liquid form. It has been indicated here, liquid swimming pool chlorine. So easily it can be applied. So here we can see this will be having around pale yellow colored solution. So or else if we want, it can be used in the form of a cylinders also. It will be available in the form of a cylinders also. So see, in the cylinders, gaseous form of the chlorine can be used up easily. So the liquid form is generally preferred and almost used exclusively nowadays. And chlorine in its gaseous form is greenish yellow gas, about 2.5 times heavier than the air, and it gets dissolved in the water but slightly. The maximum solubility being just 1% at 10°C. So, and exact amount of the pressure applied in order to make the cylinders, that is liquid form of the chlorine, is just pressurized and it is converted into gaseous form and filled in the cylinders. So the liquid chlorine is so formed is an umber colored oily fluid. It is also 1.5 times heavier than the water. That under 1000 kilonewton per meter square is pressurized, and around 50 to 100 kgs of the cylinders can be weighing cylinders can be made. And whenever it is released, chlorine, the liquid chlorine gets converted into gas, which escapes out of the cylinder and gets dissolved in the water. To make the solution in a chlorinator, generally the instrument called chlorinator is used in order to feed the chlorine that is available in the cylinders into the water supply system. Okay, so the chlorine gas which appears here in this image, we can see this is actually the leakage of the chlorine gas. So the chlorine gas generally neither burns nor explodes, but can therefore be safely stored in steel cylinders either in gaseous form or in the liquid form. But the chlorine gas causes irritation to the lungs and the membranes of the nose and throat, and chlorine content about 10 mg per liter in air can be easily noticed and felt by its smell, but more than 20 mg per liter causes inconvenience, and 1000 mg per liter may cause death just within 5 minutes of exposure. That is the danger with it. Because of that, the storage has to be properly done. For these reasons, storage is must carefully done, and improper storage of it may lead to some of the accidents. Because of that, it is stored in a well ventilated rooms and it should be carefully handled so as to avoid any undue leakages. Even gas masks are also used to protect against the chlorine gas. So this is about the chlorine gas which is used, and as we already told, 20 to 30 minutes of contact period has to be given in order to make it sufficient with the contact time. This image is showing the injection of the chlorine gas into the water treatment plant. So bubbles what you are seeing is because of the injection of the gas. Some of the advantages we can achieve with use of the chlorine, free molecular chlorine, that is in the form of a chlorine gas or the liquid. So it can be easily stored for a long time since it is within the cylinders without any risk or getting it as a deteriorated. And next is it's quite cheap and easily available. It occupies less storage since we are storing it in a cylinders. It will be very compact and it can be easily and cheaply transported. And chlorine dose to be added can be measured since we are using the instrument called chlorinator in order to control the doses. Because of that, there is no chances of the overdosing or else the underdosing. So initial cost of installation and is also quite low. Then the initial cost, just it will be with the usage of the chlorinator that has to be invested. And it is very powerful disinfectant and may remain in the water as a residual in order to take care of the future contamination. And then it is uniformly applied to the entire body of the water because through the injector we are applying the chlorine to the water. And the operation of the plant does not require much skilled supervision because storage is has to be done carefully. That is the only requirement. But other than that, chlorinator, when it is fixed for its dosage, as the amount of the water enters, as per that amount of the water it will be injecting the chlorine. Lastly, there is no formation of the sludge as it is in the case of the application of the chlorine in the bleaching powder. Bleaching powder creates the sludge formation in the water. That is the advantages with use of the free molecular chlorine or a liquid or a gaseous form of the chlorine. The chlorine we are considering is use of hypochlorites and bleaching powder. Usually calcium and sodium hypochlorites may be used for chlorinating small public water supplies. Usually when it is added into the water, it dissolves in water and create hypochlorite ions. And this process we call it as hypochlorination. And commercially available calcium hypochlorite is generally called as high test hypochlorite, HTH. Okay, and it contains around 60% to 70% available chlorinate. So that is the availability with respect to the hypochlorites. Of another form of the chlorine compound we can use generally is the bleaching powder, which is even used at the house scales also, or which is also called as chlorinated lime or calcium oxychlorite, and it is having a molecular formula CaOCl2. CaO is indicating the content of lime, Cl2 is indicating the content of the chlorine. So this compound is a combination of the lime and the chlorine. So to the lime powder, the liquid chlorine is injected, and this compound is a white amorphous powder as shown in this figure. So this powder is used for disinfecting the water, and it is generally having a pungent smell of the chlorine. When it is freshly made, it contains around 30% of the available chlorine, but it is unstable in the unstable compound. On exposure to the air, light and moisture, it rapidly loses its chlorine content and it goes on reducing. And its strength should therefore first of all ascertain before it is used in the chlorination. That is the condition with this. Because of this, it is tedious, laborious, and inefficient and expensive disinfectant. Because of that, it is the limitations of the bleaching powder. So since because of this, considering some of the advantages with hypochlorites are more used compared to the bleaching powder, since the hypochlorites are available in the small pockets in powder form, and also they contain the chlorine content does not decrease with the storage. In the figure we can see application of the chlorine for the purpose of disinfection around the premises. Here also we can see the application surrounding to the premises wherever we feel infections may be present. Usually applying of the bleaching powder is traditionally used. This is about the use of hypochlorites and bleaching powder. The third form of the chlorine we are considering is in the form of a chlorine tablets. These are now commercially available everywhere across India. Even with the small quantities of the water, this is useful since it is available in the form of a tablet, but they are costly. And they are available in the market under various trade names such as Halozone tablets. And these tablets are manufactured in various strengths also and are now available in plenty in Indian market at a cheap rate. A single tablet of around 0.5 grams is sufficient to disinfect about 20 liters of water. Here in this figure we can see this tablets can also be used for applying it onto the disinfection of the swimming pools. These tablets can be used for treating even the overhead water storage tanks, or for treating groundwater supplies, and even for retreating the public water supplies at consumers' end during the waterborne epidemics or during the floods when public supplies are liable to the contamination. So whenever we want immediate disinfection of the water, we can go for adding just a tablet of a chlorine. This is a very compact and easy method of chlorination. Next form of the chlorine we are considering is use of chloramines or use of chlorine with ammonia. This is actually the combination of chlorine with the ammonia. NH2 stands for ammonia and Cl stands for the chlorine. So this combination is also works as an effective disinfectant when we compare with the other methods of the chlorination also. And these compounds are quite stable when we compare with the bleaching powder or other methods in which we have considered previously, and also can remain in water as a residuals for sufficient time, contrary to the unstable chlorine which evaporates after some time, just like in the bleaching powder. Hence, they can provide a greater safeguard against the future pollution, but comparatively, they are much weaker disinfectants comparison with the free chlorine. So, but it has some of the using of this has some of the advantages. they do not cause any bad taste or odor which will be left after as a residuals, just like we do it with the other form of the chlorination. Some amount of the odor and also the taste will be getting changed, so that is with the disadvantage of the other forms of the chlorine, but that problem will not be there with this. And they are also very useful whenever the phenols are present in the water, because reactions of the phenols directly with the chlorine will result in creation of the disagreeable taste, so that will not be a problem by the use of the chloramines. Hence they can be used as a disinfectants. And producing them, first of all, ammonia is added into the water by the process, and by using the instrument called ammoniator, and then the chlorine is added into the water in a doses. So it is combined with the chlorine and ammonia, and then the combination of the chloramine is formed. And whenever we are considering with this, the ammonia should be properly applied and mixed with the water about 20 minutes to 1 to 2 hours earlier than applying the chlorine. This contact period of ammonia being kept higher when phenols are present in the water, because some amount of ammonia is needed in order to react with the phenols. The ammonia is applied by the separate machine, as we told, it is ammoniator, and mechanical mixing is adopted because ammonia, although highly soluble in water, does not disperse easily in it. So separate machine is needed in order to feed the ammonia as well as to mix the ammonia with the chlorine. So because of this, this acts as a very good chlorination method. Last form of the chlorine we are considering is application in the form of a chlorine dioxide gas. Chlorine dioxide gas has a formula ClO2, is also a very good and effective and also powerful disinfectant, and around 2.5 times stronger than the chlorine. And it is produced by passing chlorine gas through sodium chloride. And this chlorine dioxide gas is quite costly and very unstable, and has to be immediately after its production stored properly. Okay, for these reasons it is generally not used for treating ordinary public supplies. However, because of its stronger disinfecting powers, it may be used for treating waters containing large amount of organic impurities. As we told, the amount of chlorine what we are adding is not only used for killing the bacteria, but also used to stabilize some of the organic matter and organic impurities present in the water. And it may also be used for treating the water containing phenolic compounds which may develop unwanted taste and odor if we are going to use chlorine alone. Since the action of the chlorine dioxide remains unaffected by high pH values of around 6 to 10, it can be advantageously used for treating highly alkaline waters with pH between 8 to 10. The normal dose of the chlorine dioxide usually ranges between 0.5 to 1.5 milligram per liter. This is about the various forms of the chlorine that we can add into the water.